So this week's parsha is going to be Parsha Tzav, and the title of the class is How to Deal with a Pandemic. And actually, believe it or not, the Gemara talks about it in Baba Kama, page 60b. And the Gemara says the following idea. The Gemara says that what happens, what should you do when there is a pandemic? What should you do in that case? The Gemara says like this. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis have taught us, Dever be'ir, if there is a plague in the city, Kanes raglecha, you should stay at home. Shinemar, as it says in the pasuk in Parshas Bo, by Makas Bechoros, it says by the plague of the firstborn, that they were instructed va'atem lo seitu ish mepesach beiso ad boiker, that nobody's allowed to leave their house until the morning. So when the plague of the firstborn came, everybody was instructed that they should stay home. Therefore, the Gemara says that when there's a plague that comes to a city, you should stay home. And it also says in the pasuk in Yeshaya 26, Leichani ba b'chadarecha, go my nation, go into your rooms or your inner chambers, uskor daloscha, close your doors ba'adecha for yourself. So you have to go into your private area and you have to close the door. And it says, because outside the sword is creating bereavement, and in your inside there's fear. So the Gemara asks, why do we need these three psukim for? Gemara says, why do we need three sources for? One source should be enough. Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, maybe you'll tell me, Hani mili belayla. Maybe I can't go out at night. I will be a mamaloi, but in the daytime I could go out when there is a plague in the city. Tashma, says the second pasuk, go to your rooms and close your doors. Maybe you'll ask me, maybe you say, perhaps maybe there's no fear inside. But where there's fear inside, then you can go outside if you're afraid inside. Maybe it's better to be in the company of other people. Tashma, no. In the outside, the sword is creating bereavement. And in your inside, there is fear. Even though there's fear on the outside, on the outside, the sword is creating bereavement. And then the Gemara tells a little story. Rava Bidin Rischa, Rava, when there was anger, when there's, Rashi says, when there was a plague, Havi Socher Kavi, he used to close his windows. Because death has come to our windows. So this is what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara says that, says the Gemara, what should you do when there's a plague? What you should do is stay at home. You should stay at home no matter what the circumstances. When there's a plague, you should stay at home. So the commentaries here are asking a few questions, which we're going to ask, and then we're going to relate to Ben Yoyada, and then we're going to relate to this week's Pasha. So the commentaries here are saying that, for example, we have the Mashah. The commentary of the Mashah is bothered by the Gemara that said when there's a little bit of a contradiction, because the Gemara says that there's a little bit of a contradiction. By the way, Khani, your video is on, so if you want, you could switch it off.
Okay. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll fix the.
I have a kiva here, Rabbi.
What?
Look who's behind me.
Oh, I see. Yeah, how you doing, Akiva? Yeah. How are you?
You want to sit in?
So yeah.
He said the Torah.
Anyway, so let's continue. Yeah. So the Mashor here says, the Mashor says. Oh, here we go. That's better. Okay. So the Mashor here says, he asks a contradiction because the Gemara tells us that, says the Gemara, that when there is a famine, what should you do? The Gemara says you should leave the city. So asks the Mashor, there's a contradiction. Because on the one hand, here when there's pestilence, the Gemara is telling us that you should stay at home. But when there is a famine, meaning people are hungry, there's a shortage of food, then you shouldn't stay at home, you should leave the city. Says the Mashor, there's no contradiction. Because, says the Mashor, you're supposed to do both. It's better, he says, the Havadai Dever Be'ir, when there is a plague in the city, Namitoiv the Faze Raglav. It's, of course, it's better to move to a place where there's no plague. You should definitely move away. Of course. That's better. Will he malit nafsho to escape? This is what the Gemara tells us, means us to tell us. So if you're not going to leave the city, then what you should do is you should stay at home. So do not come out onto the roads. So the Gemara is telling you, so the Mashor is adding a little bit of a detail to the Gemara. Says the Mashor that really the best thing is to leave the city altogether. Right? So for example, if there's a virus going around and it's spreading and you don't know how it's spreading and it could be, you can contract it, the best thing to do is to move to Gibraltar. I mean, how many cases do they have over there? They probably have less cases than Arizona, right? We have 1,400 cases. People who have in New York, how many cases do they have? What is there? There's like 120,000 cases over there, whatever they have. Not 120,000, maybe a little less. I don't remember the exact number. So they have all these cases. They have all these bias. Maybe they should move to a different state, like Montana. In Montana, they have less than 1,000 people. So the first thing is to move out of the city. But if you're not going to move out of the city, at least stay at home. That's what the Mashor says. Says the Iyun Yaakov. The Iyun Yaakov reconciles this a little bit different. The Iyun Yaakov says like this. He says, "V'ayin b'tshuvas Maril Siman Nun." You should take a look in the response of the Maril, number 50. The Maril says like this: "The tchilas hadever yivrach min ha'ir." If the plague is just beginning, that's the time to leave the city. However, if it's already all over the city, then you can't leave either. And he says, I also saw this Bishnas Taf Mem in the year 16. 16 Taf Mem is 440 plus 240 would be 680. So 1680, in the year 1680, and Taf Ayin Gimel Kishiborchu, there was some kind of plague in his city, And when people ran away, and the plague was already all over the place. The plague ran away with them, right? Because we know that the virus, once there's a virus and it's out, it can migrate. It can migrate from China to Europe. It come from Europe to the United States. Come from the United States to South America. South America go to Australia, right? Once it's already takes a hold, once it's already strengthened, the virus is all over. Then it's already a time you can't run because it's going to run with you. So that's what the Maral says. You can't run because it's going to run with you. Umesun, those people who do try to run away in that story, in his time, they died. Api Harov, the majority of them at least died. He says, and that's what it says in Yerodea, Siman Kuf Tezai, and Darki Moshe says this. And this is also related to by the Torah's Chaim. The Torah's Chaim also in his commentary says the same thing. He says that, at least in his second explanation, Inami Davka, when should you stay at home? When the virus is already rampant, but it's already all over the place. Therefore, a person should not run away. Before the virus starts, that's when to run away. So, that's very hard to tell because you see something happening, you see people getting sick, you don't know whether it's going to spread or not. But that's the time that if you want to move, that's the time to move. But once it's already spreading, once it's already all over the place, then a person has to move on. So that is the basic understanding of the Gemara. And what we want to share this evening is two things. The first thing is the Ben Yoyada on this Gemara. The Ben Yoyada on this Gemara, he quotes the Mashah, he quotes the In Yaakov, he quotes the Torah's Chaim, he quotes everybody, the Maril, he quotes everybody, and then he says, Vida, you should know. Okay? You should know. And I'm not sure, we'll see. You should know, Kol Zeh Shekasavnu HaMashah Zav HaRavi In Yaakov, Hu B'Dever. When what we're talking about is a plague. All the case that we have just talked about, that's regarding the plague. However, he says, cholera, but with the sickness of cholera, that's a bacterial disease which spreads and is fatal. It causes an inflammation in the small intestines and it's fatal if a person consumes contaminated water or foodstuffs. When it comes to that, better run. He says, you better run. Don't stay at home because even at home, it's not going to help you. Staying at home, locking the door is not going to help the base should be here in the city. Why not? He says, why is it not going to help? And this is the whole point that we want to share this evening, which I think is very important. I think that this point is very important, and it complements a podcast that we gave, the class that we gave a few weeks ago. It complements what we said a few weeks ago, that our approach should be, we said in the name of the Chazon Ish, our approach should be that we should trust in the fact that we are in the hands of Hashem and that there's nothing really we can do about it. That's not something which is in our control. We cannot control what's going to happen to us. We don't decide who lives and who dies, right? And like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, we don't have a choice when we are conceived. We're not a choice when we're born. And we don't have a choice when we die. Hashem decides who's going to die, who's going to live, like we say in every single Rosh Hashanah. So that's out of our control. So he says that when there is a disease like this, the cholera, that spreads, it's not going to help if you stay at home when it's outside. Why not? He says because, and listen to this, he says, Yazik Lodam Hapachad Va'avosa. He says it doesn't help because the fear of the disease, the being afraid of the disease, will cause the person to get the disease. The sickness will come because they're afraid of it, not because they were exposed to it. Because they're afraid of it, they will contract that sickness. They will contract that virus. They will contract that disease. He says, A person will be afraid. Person will be afraid, they're going to contract it. So it's not going to help to stay at home and lock the door. The actual fear itself will bring the disease upon the person. That's what that's what he says. He says that our emotional state, our psychological state, in the midst of a pandemic affects our health. So much so that it can affect whether or not we're going to contract the disease. And the fear comes from, like we said, from the lack of clarity that everything is in Hashem's hands. And here he says something which illustrates this point. The doctors tell a story as a parable to illustrate this point. One time there was a cholera outbreak in a big city. Before the disease spread, this person went outside and he found the Malach HaMavis. He found the angel of death that was going to bring on the disease onto the city. And he said to him, how many do you want to take? How many people are going to die from this cholera in this city? And he said, there are going to be 5,000 that are going to die. 5,000 that are going to die. And at the end of the day, you know how many people died? 15,000 people died from the disease. With that sickness. And then after the plague had went away, and the mitzvah Shem goes away, the virus goes away, the plague goes away, this man again met the Malach HaMavis. He met the angel of death. You said to him, you're a liar. Why do you lie? You lie. You said that you were going to take 5,000 people. And you took 15,000 people. Why did that is a lie. That's not true. That's what he said to him. You told me that you were going to take I'm muting everybody, by the way. So if you want to make a comment or ask a question, please message on the chat. Thank you. He said, you said you're going to take 5,000 people, and you took 15,000 people. Ve'heshiv loy, listen to this. The Malach HaMaves, the angel of death, answered this man. And he said to him, Ve'heshiv lo, he answered him, Lo shakarti, I didn't lie. Ki lo lakachti b'charbi, we know that the angel of death uses some type of sword. He says, with my sword, I did not take el raka chamesh zalafim, I only took 5,000 people. The other 10, he says, the other 10 died because they were scared of the disease. That's why they died. Because of the sickness be'ir. This is the parable. To let us know that sometimes a person was not meant to die. And you know, they weren't even slated to be taken in this magefa. They were not slated to be taken in this plague, this virus. But what happened was they were afraid. They were scared. Therefore, he says, it's better to run away in such a case. Don't stay at home and don't close the door. Because all around you, there's going to be this disease. Better run away, so you shouldn't hear the cries in the streets. It's like the best that I can compare this to today is if we go onto social media and we read the Twitter and we read the news and we read the media who are showing only the tragedies. And Chas v'Shalom, they're very terrible. They're showing people dying. They're showing body bags. They're showing all these things to elicit panic and fear, perhaps, in the populace. Perhaps maybe because they want people to listen to them more. If we think kindly of them, at least their motivation is is that the people should have more. They want to listen and read more of the information that they're providing. If they provide sensationalism and panic around the city, but says the Ben Yoyada, that panic could be destructive. It could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If people start to panic from the disease, from the virus, then they might contract it themselves. They might get it themselves. See, we have a check question. What is the source? What is the source, please? The source is Baba Kama 60b in the commentary of the Ben Yoyada, and it's entitled with the words Dever Be'ir, when there is a plague in the city. Ben Yoyada from the Ben Ish Chai. So says the Ben Ish Chai. He says that when there's panic in the city, when there's fear in the city, that will cause more people to die, because those people, even though they weren't meant to contract the virus, they will contract the virus. Therefore, it's better to run away. And what? According to what we're saying, it's better to shut off the social media. It's better to shut off the news. It's better not to look at all of the bad things. At least if you're going to look at all the bad things, you should try to research also the good things. The amount of people that recovered, the amount of people that have mild symptoms, the amount of people who didn't even contract it, the amount of people that are immune, the countries that have very little that have a very little spread. At least to balance off the bad news, at least, so that we shouldn't be caught by this fear, to be encompassed by this fear of the virus, because it can have actual physiological consequences. The emotional and psychological state that we put ourselves in, a fear of being afraid of the virus, can actually have physiological consequences. So therefore, it's better to run away. It's better to shut it off, says the Ben Yoda. Don't see it with your eyes. The sickness that people are suffering from. And that will bring you to fear. Therefore, it's better to run away. You shouldn't see it with your. You shouldn't hear it with your. Shouldn't hear with your ears. You shouldn't see it with your eyes. And then he ends off this piece. Obviously, you have to end off this piece with a bracha. He ends off this piece with a blessing. He says, "Hashem is barach barachmav, and the blessed one be He with His mercy. Yivatal kol hagezeros. He should expunge all the decrees, cautious virois that are difficult and hard. Me'aleinu from us and me'al kol Yisrael, and from the Jewish people. We shouldn't hear breakage and destruction within our midst. Kol Am Yisrael, all the Jewish people, and everybody in the world. And death should be swallowed up forever. We shouldn't have any more pain. This is what the Ben Yoda says. So the lesson that we're learning from this Gemara is that the Ben Yoda is saying that when the Gemara says that what should you do when there is a virus, what should you do when there's a plague? Stay at home. But if it's spreading, if it's something that's going to, it's something that's going to, if it's spreading, but if it's something that's going to come into the inner recesses of our hearts, if it's going to take over our psyche and make us all into hypochondriacs, make us all afraid that we're not, and that we're subject to happenstance, that we're subject to random striking of the disease, and that we are not in Hashem's hands, then it's better to run away. It's better to shut off the news. It's better to shut off the social media, to run away. Can't physically run away, because wherever we run, the media follows us. The world is closed. There's no place to go. So this is what the Ben Yoda says. That's how we should conduct itself. And this is point number one that we want to make. Point number two that we want to make is how can we engender ourselves? How can we not be afraid? Besides shutting off the news, how else can we not be afraid? What else can we do? So that brings us to this week's parsha. The Torah says in this week's parsha, in chapter 7, The Torah says, chapter 7, verse number 11, we are commanded to, verse number 12, we are commanded to bring a carbon toda. Im ala toda yakrivenu. V'ikriv al zerach, we are obligated to bring a thanks offering. So Rashi here says, what is a thanks offering? Famous Gemara in Tractate Brachos, page 54b. Rashi says, a person has to admit on a miracle that happened to them. For example, if a person was in an ocean, a person was in the deserts, they were in jail, they were sick, and they became better. There's an obligation to say thank you to Hashem, to show gratitude, to bring a sacrifice. It says in Tehillim 107. It says, Yodu la Hashem chazdoi. That they admit to Hashem His kindness, and His miracles of Bnei Adam. And they bring sacrifices for this. So we have in this week's Parsha an obligation of gratitude. So much so that we are engendered that we should bring a carbon. And the obligation of gratitude extends very far, even if the good that was done to us was unintentional. And here we have a funny story, actually. A funny story in the Sefer called Midos Delay. In volume number 1, he tells a story to illustrate a point. This is page Shin Yud Zayin, page 317. That even if somebody does something good for us, we should be thankful to them. We should show them that we recognize the good that they have done for us, even if they didn't intend it to do it. And here's the story. He says there was a Maisa, there was a story that was decided by the Gedolei Hador, with the greatest of the generation. What was this story? Yehudi Shomer Torah mitzvahs. There was once a Jew who was a religious Jew who learned Torah and kept the mitzvos. He was a businessman, and he went Omad la'alis l'rakevet ha'tachtit hamufursemet shel New York. When the subways were still running in New York, he went down into the subway, and he went onto the platform in order to go take the subway in New York. Ulepesa hichlik v'nofal, he slipped. Suddenly he slipped. V'nofal etoch ha'sa'ala shel misilot ha'rakevet, and he went and he fell in the place where the train tracks were. He fell onto the train tracks. This Jew, when he fell, he hurt himself. Either he sprained his ankle or he hurt his knee, and he couldn't move. So he wasn't able to lift himself up onto the platform. And as you can imagine, in a story like this, the train was coming at him. And the train was going to run him over. It's going to crush him. And here, the train was coming. And it was clear to everybody that this is what was going to happen. And what happened? Nobody wanted to jump in to save this fella, because they were afraid that they would also get crushed the same way, that they would get crushed under the wheels of the train. And also there was a lot of electricity, a lot of wires going on. Nobody wanted to jump in. Perhaps maybe they would get electrocuted. So here he was, and nobody was going to save him, and the train was oncoming. And this was an emergency situation, and everybody started to scream. And there was one, he says there was one fella there. There was one fella in the train, and in the train station. When he realized what was happening, he jumped in. He didn't even think about it. He got up out of his seat. He ran and he jumped into onto the tracks. He grabbed the Jew, threw him like it was nothing, threw him on the platform, and he jumped with one jump back onto the platform as the train was coming, and he was saved. So what happened? This fella, he went back and he sat down on his seat, on his bench. Meanwhile, there was a whole thing going on. The Hatzolah showed up. The news showed up, filming. The train almost hit this fellow, and he was saved. And this guy was just sitting. He was just sitting on the side. He got onto the train, sat into the train on the bench, and was staring out the window as if nothing happened. And one of the reporters comes over to him and he says, How could you be sitting here staring out the window like nothing happened? What's wrong with you? Didn't you save somebody? Don't you want your picture taken? Can we put you on the on tonight's news? And the fellow says, listen. You got to understand something. He says to the to the newspaper. He says, you got to understand. I have a job, okay? I work in a restaurant. Yesterday, there was a very big party. And there were a lot of dishes. And I washed the dishes in the restaurant. Right? I got to wash the dishes. And for every hour I wash the dishes, I get $10. So when I realized what was happening, that if this guy would get hit by the train, I realized that the train is going to be delayed by at least 2 hours. And I would lose $20. I couldn't let that happen. So I jumped in and I saved him. That's why I'm sitting on the train, because I want the train to go. I got to get to work. So he didn't want to save the guy. He just didn't want to be delayed, right? He would be wasting a whole day on the train station if this guy was splattered all over the tracks. Therefore, he saved him. All right. Baruch Hashem. So this Yid was saved. But now this Yid had a Shaila. This Yid went to the Gedolei Hadar. And he went and he asked him the following question. He said that at the time when I was on the train tracks, you know what happened? And I saw this fellow jump in to save me. I said to myself, if he succeeds in saving me, I will give him $100,000 of my own money. As a Akoros HaTov, because I have to say thank you. To say thank you for saving me, giving me $100,000. But when I found out that he had no intention of saving me, he just wanted to get to work so he should wear the dishes, do I still have to give him the $100,000? This is the Shaila that he asked. So this Shaila went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Shlita, in the Bnei Brak. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky said, you absolutely have to give him every single penny of the $100,000 that you had in mind to give him if he saves you. Because you have to have Akoros HaTov for a person who saves you and does something for you, even if they don't intend to do it. You still have to have Akoros HaTov. You still have to show gratitude, and you still have to and therefore you have to give him the money. So you see how much it extends. That we said that in this week's Parsha, that if a person is sick and then they get better, there's an obligation to bring a carbon and to say thank you to the Rabbanu Shalom for saving us. And there, the Rabbanu Shalom is a Roifei Cholim, like we say in the davening. He actually heals us like a doctor. And we all Akoros HaTov. But even if he didn't, even if it could be with Hashem accidental, then it would also be an obligation upon us to show Akoros HaTov. So what are we trying to say? We're trying to say that there's a mitzvah of Akoros HaTov. And in my opinion, I think that when we start thinking about all of the good things that we have, when we start thinking about our family, when we start thinking about our children, when we start thinking about where we live and what we have, you know, you can go to Safeway today. You go to Safeway, there's no Lysol. Rahman al-Islam, there's no Lysol, there's no Purell. There's no toilet paper either. You got to get the toilet paper on the black market. What are you going to do? But you could still get sushi with the spicy mayo if you don't eat kosher. You could still get chocolate ice cream, whatever flavor you want. We live in a country where we have, even in the midst of a virus where it's better for us to stay home, the things are going on. We still have all of these things. When we start thinking about the situation that we're in, and show gratitude, at least by thinking about it, at least including it perhaps maybe in our davening when we say the modim in our davening, that we admit to Hashem for all the things that He gives us. When we think about these things, that raises our awareness of what is going on around us. when we're raised with the awareness of what's going on around us, then we dispense with the idea that the world is haphazard, that it's happenstance, that things happen randomly. And when we dispense with the idea that things happen randomly, we become calmer, we become more collected, we start to understand that we're not just going to randomly chas v'shalom something that gets sick. And even if we do get sick, Rahman al-Itzlan, lo aleinu, even if we do get sick, it's not going to be random. When we practice Hakor Zatov, when we practice gratitude, it brings us to an awareness that the world is not a random place. That and this is not just it's not a joke. It's not the fact that the world is not a random place has a consequence on our psyche. And according to this Ben Yoda that we just said, the consequence on our psyche could be a physiological consequence. It could be the difference between contracting the virus and not contracting the virus. The fear that we live in a world that's random and be afraid on a constant basis. That could bring about, that could be the self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, I don't know if any of you ever read the children's book, the children's series, a series of unfortunate events. I think maybe in book 3, there was this woman, she was Aunt, her name, she was called Aunt Josephine. So Aunt Josephine had a house that was being held up, like, you know, they have in Canyon Creek over there, whatever they have in California. It was a house that was being held up by pieces of wood on a cliff. The edge of the house was sitting on the cliff, and the rest of the house was on these rickety pieces of wood, planks that were holding it up. And when you looked at the house, you said to yourself, this for sure, this house is going to collapse. There's no question this house is going to collapse. And then when it collapses, it's going to fall into the river, and in the river there were leeches, they eat you up. And you know what happened in the end? And Aunt Josephine was a scared woman. She wouldn't touch the doorknob. She wouldn't turn on the heat. She was scared of her own shadow. She was a person who was afraid of everything. And you know what happened in the end to her? What happened in the end is what you would think that would happen to a scared person. Her whole house collapsed. The whole thing went into the water, into the leeches. And this is what the Ben Yoda is saying. The Ben Yoda says we cannot be afraid. The Ben Yoda says we should be calm, collective, and know that Hashem is in charge of the world, that it's not a random world, that it's not a haphazard world. And when we're not afraid, then we're healthier, not only psychologically, not only emotionally, but perhaps maybe even physically. Perhaps maybe not being afraid, walking with our heads up high and knowing that Hashem is in control, perhaps maybe that will protect us from contracting the virus in the first place, like the Ben Yoda said. This is the message that we wanted to share this evening, and on this week's Parsha. Okay, and does anybody have any questions? And if not, then we will conclude the class. No? Okay, well, have a good Shabbos, everybody. Then have a good Shabbos.
Class. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Rabbi, are you? Is this video? I mean, is this recorded? The lecture?
Yeah, it's recorded. It will be published as a podcast, and perhaps maybe we'll also publish the video too on Facebook. You can watch it.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Bye, everybody.
Good Shabbos.